In this video, we take a quick look at the Arnold scatter object, which can efficiently distribute millions of instances over a surface. I have this plane geometry, which I want to scatter this cube and cone over it. Let's add an Arnold scatter object from the Arnold menu. It's a simple and intuitive tool. In the distribution tab, you can define the plane geometry as the surface that we want to scatter our geometries on top. Let's decrease the max distributed points to 500 for now. Next, make the objects that you want to scatter as a child of the scatter object. So just make the cube and the cone, set them as children of the scatter object. And finally, under the display tab, change the viewport display mode from dots to shaded. Now let's come back to the distribution tab. We have different distribution types, including vertex, edge, polygon surface, and surface. In the edge mode, you can use this point per edge number to control the number of the clones on each edge, and use this uniform distribution to uniformly distribute them on the edges. In the surface mode, you can control the distribution of the copies based on density or point count. So if I change it to point count, I can define a specified number of copies using this point number. If we change the surface mode to density, the distribution will happen per square unit. If I reset the maximum points to the default value, now we can use this density percentage to control the overall density per square unit. Let's set it to 0.25% for now. The cool thing about the density surface mode is that if you start changing the size of your scattered on geometry, the number of clones will stay proportional. If I select the plane and set its size to, let's say, 100 centimeters, you can see the number of the clones will decrease to stay proportional. And the same thing is true if we make the plane bigger. For now, set it to 400 by 400 centimeters. Max points is the maximum number of points that is allowed. We cannot have more than 10,000 points at the time being, even if we increase the density percentage. We can use a black and white shader to control the distribution of the clones. So for example, I can use something like a gradient as the density shader. Where the shader is white, the clones will be distributed, and where it is black, there would be no clones. You can go inside the gradient and adjust the points and add new ones. And you can see the changes in the distribution based on that. For now, let's clear out the shader. You can enable this push apart function and define a distance down here, which no two cloners can be closer than the defined distance here. Let's try 20 centimeters, maybe 50 centimeters. And this can be very useful to make sure the cloners won't overlap each other. For now, let's disable it. Under the Instance tab, you can define the objects to be scattered. By default, it scatters the child objects. You can change it to custom shapes and add the geometries to be scattered to this custom shapes list. For now, we can just use the child objects. Using the shape mode, we can control the order of the scattered objects. Sequential uses the order of the child objects or the custom shape list. Random distributes them randomly. Blend uses equal amount of each object. And first uses the first object in the list. In the Orientation tab, you can control the up direction. By default, it uses the normal direction of the surface, which is the plane in this case. We can change it to axes and choose one of the Z, Y, and X directions as the up direction. Or I can change it to target and define a target object as the up direction. Let's add a null, for example, and use it as the target. Now if I move it around, the object will always look at that target. For now, let's change it to normal. We can control the front direction of the clones as well. We have a few self-explanatory options here. And finally, using the position, scale, and rotations, you can add variation to the clones. For example, let's come down to the scale section. I can start increasing the variation to add some randomness to the scale of the clones. I can disable uniform scale, set the Y scale maybe to 4 or just maybe 2 to get a different look. Or I can come down to the rotation section, set the X rotation to 360 degrees. And now if I start increasing the rotation variation, we add randomness to the X rotation of the clones, because that's the only value that is bigger than 0. Under Display tab, you can decrease the number of displayed clones in the viewport by decreasing the level of detail percentage, and use the viewport mode to display the clones in the viewport in different modes. And finally, you can add different cinema 4D effectors. For example, let's add a plane effector. I'm going to disable position and enable scale. Activate uniform scale and set it to -1. In the fall off tab, add a spherical field. Increase its radius to 150 centimeters. And invert its strength under the remapping tab. Nice. So in this video, we learned about Arnold's scatter object. See you in the next video.